It is 8:38 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It is the 7th day of May, 2026, and this is episode 1316 of Bitcoin. And we've got an update on the strategic Bitcoin reserve coming in just a few weeks. TM. Oh, yeah, this is going to be grand. It's going to be grand. That's going to be first up on deck on this episode of Bitcoin And with me, your host, David Bennett, bringing you Bitcoin news and macro from around the world. Next up, Clarity Act. We've got a kind of an update, for lack of a better term. Is we got a time target, so we'll bring that to you. Boltz is launching a non-custodial stablecoin swap, but it's going to be Bitcoin only. At least that's what it looks like. Bittrex wants its $24 million settlement back. We'll tell you back from who. And then in the second part of the show, quantum attacks could worsen. And this is a new piece of FUD. And honestly, it kind of gets me a little closer to tinfoil hattery today. So we'll go off on the rails on that one. Then Bitwise CEO says the 4-year crypto cycle is dead. Where have we heard that shit before? Right. That's what I'm saying. Bitcoin volatility futures will be launching, and then we're going to end it on Aave. We've got yet an update on the whole Aave hack. So, and I'm kind of fascinated with just how extreme this thing is getting. But first, U.S. Bitcoin reserve update coming in the next few weeks, according to a White House advisor. Jeffrey Albus is writing this one for CoinDesk. An announcement about the long-anticipated United States Strategic Bitcoin Reserve is coming in the next few weeks. Patrick Witt, executive director of the President's Council of Advisors for Digital Assets, told CoinDesk. The federal effort to inventory, centralize, and secure U.S.-held Bitcoin and other digital assets has been running in the background for months, Witt said. Following President Donald Trump's executive order calling for Bitcoin and other crypto assets to be set aside in long-term holdings, the White House halted what Witt characterized as, quote, a fire sale liquidation under the previous administration and started auditing what crypto each agency was holding. Quote, we've heard stories and confirmed some of them of cold wallets that were being stored in drawers of desks in at various agencies. Wow. Witt cited a recent exploit involving assets held by the U.S. Marshal Service as a motivating proof point for centralization. Bloomberg reported in January that the Marshal Service was investigating a possible hack of U.S. government digital asset accounts after on-chain investigator Zach XBT claimed a hacker stole more than $60 million in late 2025, including funds from government seizure wallets. Quote, it's a case in point for why it was so necessary that the president established the SBR and that he instructed the agencies to take these assets very seriously and properly safeguard them. Custody is unique for digital assets, Witt said. Witt declined, of course, to disclose how much Bitcoin or other crypto the federal government currently holds. Quote, number one is we want to get our own house in order. We want to properly safeguard, custody these assets before we discuss any details around it, he said. He then suggested the upcoming announcement would address some of the open questions on size and structure, but said he did not want to front run any of the other principles involved. He also clarified that the reserve will not absorb every newly seized asset automatically. Crypto seized in active legal proceedings sits in pending status until forfeiture is finalized, he said, with assets potentially returned to victims through restitution before being moved to the Bitcoin reserve or the separate stockpile anticipated for other crypto assets. On the legal underpinnings, Witt said much of the staff work has gone into general counsel level questions about which authorities allow agencies to hold the assets, for how long, and whether they are subject to congressional clawback. Quote, this really hadn't been explored until the president signed the executive order, he said. Codification will need to follow through Congress, Witt said, citing Senator Cynthia Lummis's Bitcoin Act in the Senate and Representative Nick Begich's American Reserves Modernization Act, a rebranded update of the same bill in the U.S. House of Representatives. Quote, it always needs to be followed up with proper legislation, Witt said. The likely need for a legislative underpinning to the formation of the Bitcoin Reserve has been a major constraint in this process. It's unclear when Congress will find the bandwidth to push through a reserve bill. So, yeah, we're going to get an update. It's probably not going to be what anything or anybody thinks it's going to be. I can almost guarantee you that if an update actually drops, it's going to be a huge nothing burger. But agencies, they confirmed that agencies were keeping hardware wallets in desk drawers. That should concern everybody listening. Now on to the Clarity Act. White House targets July the 4th for Clarity Act passage, according to a crypto advisor. This is Stephen Graves for Decrypt. The White House is targeting July 4th for House passage of the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, according to Patrick Witt, yet one more time, Executive Director of the President's Council of Advisors for Digital Assets. Speaking at Consensus Miami, Witt said, quote, I think that would be a tremendous birthday present for America, celebrating our 250th, end quote. The administration's timeline calls for Senate Banking Committee markup this month, followed by a Senate floor vote in June and House passage before the July 4th deadline. Witt acknowledged the compressed schedule while expressing confidence in the feasibility. Quote, there's not a lot of slack left in the rope right now, but it is an achievable timeline, he said. The path to passage cleared significantly after Senators Thom Tillis and Angela Alsobrooks reached a compromise on stablecoin yield provisions last Friday. The agreement prohibits bank deposit equivalent yield while allowing activity-based rewards tied to spending. Quote, crypto is unhappy, banks are unhappy, but they're both about equally unhappy. And so we know that we got the right compromise. We're going to make a compromise. Neither one of y'all are going to like it, but that means it's working. Industry leaders and lawmakers offered mixed assessments of the timeline's feasibility. Paul Grewal, Coinbase's chief legal officer, stated Wednesday that, quote, I'm very confident we're going to see the Clarity Act pass this summer at the latest. I very much encourage the banking trade to not snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, he added. Last week, Senate Banking Committee Chairman Tim Scott described the bill as being in the red zone, while Senator Kristen Gillibrand offered a more cautious timeline, saying Wednesday that it could be completed by the first week of August if we're lucky. Witt framed the legislation as essential for maintaining U.S. leadership in digital assets, warning that, quote, if we're not setting the standard, if we're not writing the rules, then we are going to be a rule follower, and we're going to be following somebody else's rule book on this, and God forbid it's China that's ultimately writing those rules, end quote. The Clarity Act's progress through Congress has been slow, with previous attempts to pass the bill foundering as crypto and banking interests failed to reach compromise on key issues. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse warned that the next 2 weeks are critical, noting that if Senate markup doesn't happen soon, the likelihood of the bill passing is going to drop precipitously. And right now, let's see, White House. There is a market over here on the sidebar of decrypt.co. White House targets July 4th for Clarity Act passage, crypto advisor. And the market is, will crypto bloom this spring? What the hell? That's insane, man. That's not the market that I wanted to see. I saw a market on this that they're okay. Like I can't remember if it's Polymarket or Kalshi, or if it's one of the other prediction markets. But it seems that that now the markets are signaling that there's a 68% chance that clarity will actually pass sometime this summer, probably later in the summer, but still 68%. And that's the odds of that have actually risen up from below 50% just a few weeks ago. So if you're looking for what the prediction markets are saying, there it is. Moving on to Boltz. Boltz launches non-custodial USDC swaps, bridging Bitcoin directly to Circle's regulated dollar. Juan Galt, writing for Bitcoin Magazine. Boltz, a leading non-custodial swap provider for Bitcoin, today announced the launch of USDC swaps, enabling instant conversion between Bitcoin and USDC, the regulated stablecoin issued by Circle. Swaps are supported across all major Bitcoin layers, including the Lightning Network, and are live now at Boltz.exchange, and Boltz is spelled B-O-L-T-Z. Quote, USDC swaps mark a turning point for the Bitcoin ecosystem. For the first time, anyone can move between Bitcoin and the dollar most trusted by the regulated financial world without opening an account, completing KYC, or trusting a custodian in the process, said the team in a press release shared with Bitcoin Magazine. Exchanging Bitcoin for USDC is not new. What is new is doing it without giving up custody. Today, users who want to move between Bitcoin and a regulated dollar are typically funneled through centralized exchanges and brokerages that require account creation, identity verification, and full custody of user funds. A subset of services offer the same conversion without an account upfront, but because those services still take custody of user funds during the swap, they retain the ability to pause settlement and request identity documents if a transaction is flagged for review, with funds potentially getting confiscated in the meantime. The trade-off, in either case, has been the same: trust, surveillance, and friction in exchange for access. Boltz removes that trade-off. USDC swaps execute trustlessly with no account, no sign-up, and no KYC at any stage. Funds remain under the control of the user until the moment USDC arrives in the user's wallet. This is the core innovation, and it is what separates Boltz from every other path between Bitcoin and Circle's USDC. For more than a decade, Bitcoin and the stablecoin economy have evolved on parallel tracks. Bitcoin built the open, permissionless side of the internet's financial layer. Circle and USDC built the compliant, audited dollar that institutions require for operations. The two rarely connected together directly. USDC swaps close that gap. With a single transaction, value can move between Bitcoin and a fully reserved, monthly attested dollar that is already integrated into the products of Stripe, Coinbase, Visa, MasterCard, BlackRock, Robinhood, Revolut, Nubank, and a long list of banks, fintechs, and payment processors worldwide. Quote, the momentum is unmistakable, wrote the Boltz team. USDC is the stablecoin that Stripe and Paradigm placed at the center of Tempo, their new payments-focused blockchain. It is the dollar on which Coinbase built its institutional infrastructure. It is the dollar that regulated card networks, asset managers, and global fintechs reach for when they need a digital dollar that they can defend to a regulator. Boltz USDC swaps means plugging Bitcoin directly into the rails that the regulated world is already standardizing upon. Quote, Bitcoin and the regulated financial system have always been adjacent worlds, separated by intermediaries that demand custody and identity, said Killian Rausch, CEO of Boltz. Quote, USDC swaps remove that separation. A merchant accepting Bitcoin, a freelancer paid in sats, a treasury team managing operating capital, all of them can now reach the regulated dollar economy on their own terms within seconds, end quote. The swaps are built on Circle's cross-chain transfer protocol, the native infrastructure that allows USDC to move across blockchains without wrapping or third-party bridges. every USDC delivered through a Boltz swap is genuine Circle-issued USDC, the same USDC accepted by regulated payment partners around the world. By building on CCTP, Boltz is able to serve users across every USDC-supported network, including Ethereum, Arbitrum, Base, Polygon, and others, from a single, focused liquidity provider. Use cases across consumer and businesses. Boltz believes that USDC swaps unlock a broad set of applications, including off-ramping Bitcoin into the banking system through regulated partners that already accept USDC, such as Stripe, Coinbase, and Bridge. Day-to-day operations for Bitcoin-native businesses, such as paying vendors and funding payroll and setting recurring bills in regulated dollars without leaving non-custodial infrastructure. Merchant settlement for Bitcoin-accepting businesses that need to book revenue in compliant, accountant-friendly USDC. All of the above are now unlocked without having to use crypto wallets outside of Bitcoin. Users send Bitcoin through Boltz, and the recipient can receive USDC. Boltz emphasized that the launch does not change the company's Bitcoin-first orientation. All swaps remain non-custodial, all swaps settle atomically, and a Bitcoin-only mode continues to be available for users who prefer a stripped-down interface. USDC swaps simply extend the reach of Bitcoin into a part of the financial system that until now has been difficult to access without trusted intermediaries. USDC swaps are available right now to all users at Boltz.exchange. Integration into various SDKs and the Boltz BTC Pay plugin is planned to follow in the coming weeks, according to the company. Well, that's the end of the article, and while I'm not a fan of Circle, because I'm not a fan of Jeremy Allaire, and I won't get into why, if you've listened to this podcast, you already know that. But being able to go directly from Bitcoin into USDC and from USDC into Bitcoin seems like it might be a decent idea, because we're not, and I said this yesterday, we are just not at a place where Bitcoin to Bitcoin transactions are going to be accepted by like just everybody. Somehow or another. And this, I honestly think this has everything to do with branding. The US dollar has a brand. I mean, look at the marketing team. Jesus, the US Navy, the Army, the Air Force, the Marine Corps. That's the marketing team. I'm serious, man. And the brand, the US dollar, I mean, shit, that thing is recognizable from around the world. And the word dollar itself is recognizable all around the world. That's a tough brand. That's a very hardcore marketing situation to try to get over. So, maybe this is sort of a way to tunnel through that. Like I said, I'm not a fan of Circle, not really that great of a fan of Tether either, because I look at stablecoin and I'm like, it inflates just like the US dollar. It carries with it all the problems that the United States dollar already has. It's the one of the situations that Bitcoin was built to fix. And yet the marketing is so strong, the brand is so strong that people will literally learn how to use a cryptocurrency wallet so that they can use digital US dollars, even though it's not any less difficult to learn how to use Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. All right, well, running your own Lightning node, that you got to set that one aside. But there's plenty of Lightning wallets out there that are really killer use, easy to use, easy to learn. I honestly think that this is a branding issue, but I'll get on that soapbox on another day. This is definitely going to be a shorter show today. I am just going to be skipping a few things that I normally do. So I've just got some other stuff that I need to do, but I didn't want to leave you guys out in the wind to twist. Bittrex wants its $24 million settlement back now that the SEC is, pro-crypto. Sandra Lutz from Decrypt.co Crypto exchange Bittrex, which ceased operations after settling an SEC lawsuit under President Joe Biden's administration, is now requesting the agreement be tossed in light of the regulator's about-face on cryptocurrency. In a new filing this week, attorneys representing the exchange asked a federal judge to vacate his prior judgment and compel the SEC to refund the $24 million Bittrex or dollars that Bittrex paid the regulator as a penalty back in 2023. Under the Biden administration, the SEC sued Bittrex for offering the sale of crypto tokens that it deemed to be illegally unregistered securities. The Seattle-based exchange ultimately settled, agreeing to pay $24 million in penalties. That agreement came a year after Bittrex agreed to pay the Treasury Department $29 million for apparent violations of sanctions against nations including Iran, Cuba, and Syria. Shortly thereafter, Bittrex shut down, saying that it was not economically viable to continue operating in the current U.S. regulatory and economic environment. Since President Donald Trump's return to power last year, however, the SEC has radically shifted its approach to crypto. The agency's leadership has repeatedly emphasized that it does not view the vast majority of crypto tokens as securities, and has also dropped almost every lawsuit it had filed against crypto companies and exchanges. Now, Bittrex's attorneys are arguing it would only be fair for the former exchange to receive some benefits from the SEC's change of heart. Quote, 2.5 years after extracting a settlement from a bankrupt cryptocurrency exchange premised on the legal theory that the tokens that traded on the exchange were securities, the SEC has A, conceded that its legal theory was wrong and those tokens were not securities, B, acknowledged that its enforcement strategy was misguided from the start, and C, dropped every similar case and investigation except this one, Bittrex's attorneys wrote in a Monday's motion to vacate. The filing also states that in March, the Trump SEC moved to forfeit Bittrex's $24 million to the Treasury Department to distribute to former customers who suffered financial harm. The company's attorneys are now urging the case's judge to order those funds returned to Bittrex before the funds are dispersed. An SEC spokesperson declined to comment on the case when reached out for by Decrypt. The Trump SEC has moved to forfeit the $24 million to the Treasury Department with plans to distribute. That's going to cause Bittrex a heap of trouble in trying to get this motion vacated because that machine has already been started up. Only time will tell if they actually get the money back, but I don't think they will. I think Bittrex is. I think they got hosed. Yeah, but I don't think they're coming back from this one. So, in the meantime, while we wait, let's run the numbers. CNBC futures and commodities. Merbon crude is down 5% to $93.37 a barrel. Brent North Sea, however, escaping all death, it's only down by 2% to $99.17 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate is down also 2% to $93.17. Natural gas acting as the hedge today, it is up 2.12%, back to $2.78 per thousand cubic feet, and gasoline is down 1 1/3 to $3.41 a gallon. Metals are mixed this morning. Palladium is down almost 2 points. Gold is up almost a full point to 4,738 and 6 dimes. Platinum is down almost a half. Silver is up, almost 5 full points, crossing 80 to get to $81 and a dime. Copper is up 0.11%. Most of ag is in the red today, but chocolate making another move higher, 6.5 points to the upside. Biggest loser today is coffee, 3.6% to the downside. Live cattle down a point. Lean hogs up 0.78% and feeder cattle down 1 1/3. The S&P is moving sideways. NASDAQ is up 1/3. The Dow is down 0.17%, and the S&P Mini is down almost a half. All the markets hit all-time highs this morning. All the equity markets, S&P, NASDAQ, Dow, all of them hit all-time highs. Dow is more volatile than the other two, but even the Dow hit something like 50,000. I want to say it was like 50,510 before falling back down to 49,950, but it is what it is. And then there's always Bitcoin, which is pissing me straight the fuck off today. $79,750. I mean, we crested almost to 83,000, and I guess a whole bunch of people said, "Okay, that's it. That was our buy-in. I'm scared to death of this thing. Let's get out." So I guess that's what happened, but it's still a $1.6 trillion market cap. We can only purchase 16.9 ounces of our favorite shiny metal rock, though, with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 20,025,813.65 of. Average fees per block are normal 0.02 BTC taken in fees on a per block basis. 35 blocks carrying 52,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 1 sat per VByte. Low priority gets you in at 0.3. Oh, look at that. Hash rate has risen again. We're up to 981 exahashes per second. It is all the security I will ever need on the Bitcoin network. From Sailor's Cell Strategy, Nick Dose with 207 says cheers, and Nostragang with 101 sats says nothing. And that's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use, and oh boy, here we go. Braden Lindria from Cointelegraph has this headline: Quantum attacks could worsen without proof of ownership, according to some outfit named Near One. Good Lord. Blockchain protocols preparing for the quantum computing threat should also consider how to quickly verify ownership on the blockchain if funds are stolen, the development and research team behind the Layer 1 Near protocol said. I got to pause right there because we have to read that again. And before I pontificate on it, just think about what this says. Blockchain protocols preparing for the quantum computing threat should also consider how to quickly verify ownership on the blockchain if funds are stolen. Concerns that quantum computers could eventually break blockchain cryptography have fueled worries about private keys and wallet security, but most of the conversation is focused on preventing such attacks. Quote, "We won't be able to tell if someone running a transaction is the rightful owner of the asset or not," Near One Chief Technology Officer Anton Astafev said on Wednesday, adding that blockchain protocols would be forced to make tough decisions on whether to freeze compromised crypto wallets. Quote, "Protocols will face the challenge of deciding to either block all assets at this moment or enter into a wild west," he said. He then suggested that zero-knowledge proof technology could enable the rightful owner to demonstrate knowledge of the original seed phrase, without revealing sensitive information. Quote, "This is one example of how research across blockchain ecosystems is essential and valuable as everyone prepares for quantum unknowns." The push comes after researchers at Google and the California Institute of Technology said in March that functional quantum computers could arrive sooner than expected and would need far less compute power to break cryptography than previously thought. Google claimed that quantum computers could potentially break Bitcoin's cryptography within 10 minutes, allowing hackers to perform an on-spend attack. Let me pause right there to say that that's break the cryptography within 10 minutes of like a block, not everything, right? Plus, if I saw something the other day and I haven't reported on it because I don't know, but that Google had to retract that paper. If somebody's got confirmation on that, let me know, okay? Because I've seen that a couple of times. If they did have to retract it, and from what I saw, they had to retract it because they were forced to admit that they didn't actually perform the function that they were talking about. And we kind of knew that because it was all mathematical based, but still, if like I said, if anybody has proof of retraction of the Google paper that suggested all this to begin with, please let me know. Until then, I'm not going to say much more about it. Asterviv, I can't pronounce his name, said that Near One is researching how to solve the problem of not knowing whether a transaction is made by the owner or not. He also noted that Near developers are building a post-quantum safe signing system for the Layer 1 blockchain, which secures more than $137.6 million in user funds. One of the first quantum solutions being implemented on Near is FIPS 204, which has been approved by the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology and is set to launch on testnet by the end of the second quarter. Other crypto ecosystems are taking swift action too. The Ethereum Foundation created the post-quantum Ethereum team to build quantum solutions into Ethereum at the protocol level by 2029. Two of Solana's validator clients, Anza and Firedancer, have also implemented a test version of Falcon, which is a new post-quantum signature solution to help prepare the Solana network for future quantum threats. The Bitcoin community has also begun looking at ways to tackle the problem. Adam Back of Blockstream said in April that current quantum computers are basically lab experiments, backing up earlier claims that quantum computers are actually decades away. Still, he recommended that Bitcoin developers start looking at building quantum solutions. Well, they have been for a while. I won't say any more about it than that. Okay, on to this one. Bitwise CEO says the 4-year crypto cycle is dead as institutional era takes hold. You know what? Before we get into that one, I need to say a few words about this, the one that I was just reading about the quantum threat and all. Let me get back here to where it was. Yeah, I want to look at this one again because at first it sounds like they have to verify your ownership. They literally want your name and number. If what the guy from Near One says is actually true and they want to use zero knowledge proofs to do that, I'm down with that. I'm kind of okay. I like, as far as being on Solana, I don't give a shit because it's a shit coin. But like, if for whatever reason we needed to use zero knowledge proofs on Bitcoin for a purpose such as that, I'm not entirely upset because zero knowledge proofs work. They're very interesting. They work in other scenarios to be able to prove a thing without actually letting on who knows that thing. And from a privacy standpoint, that's okay. When I first ran across this article, it sounded to me like it's possible these guys were suggesting, yeah, if you own Solana and you've got it on a blockchain, we need to know your name, like KYC. I'm sure that is in the cards at one point or another, but according to this particular article, not today. Now, let's get back to this one from Naga Avan Namayo from the block about Bitwise saying that the crypto cycle is dead. Yeah, sure. Hunter Horsley, Bitwise asset management co-founder and CEO, has a message for crypto investors still waiting for the market to bounce back on schedule. He says, stop waiting. Quote, the 4-year cycle is dead, Horsley said at a Consensus 2026 in Miami, where he sat for an interview at Solana Accelerate with the block's Gareth Jenkinson. Quote, the 4-year cycle, hold on for a second, got a little problem there. The 4-year cycle stipulates that you have 3 years of up markets and then a year of down markets. Last year was down, so it's over, he said, echoing rhetoric shared by Bitwise CIO Matt Hugan. Building on the end of crypto's 4-year cycle, the Bitwise executive further pointed to a new industry regime for the growing digital asset sector. Horsley reached for a Winston Churchill line. one of his Bitwise colleagues, Teddy Visara, regularly references to capture this inflection. Quote, "This is not the end. It's not the beginning of the end, but it is the end of the beginning." End quote. The patterns and intuitions of the prior era, he said, no longer apply in the new one. Horsley suggested Morgan Stanley now features more prominently in crypto conversations than firms like Gemini, and that stablecoins with an aggregate supply of over $300 billion are attracting as much attention as altcoins. The new chapter in Horsley's reading will be defined by mainstream institutions, fewer dominant players, and broader adoption. It's a different kind of market altogether than in the past. On Strategy's Stretch preferred instrument, Horsley was unambiguous. Quote, "I think this thing is a juggernaut. I think it's early innings." He drew a comparison to Snapchat's disappearing photos, surprising on the surface, initially met with skepticism, but ultimately delivering something users wanted at the level of first principles. According to Horsley, Stretch taps the same dynamic, a stable NAV backed by Bitcoin as collateral, offering a yield that income investors can underwrite. The Bitcoin as collateral insight, he said, quote, "was hidden in plain sight," end quote. Horsley also predicted the structure would proliferate across the industry within the next 12 months, expanding Bitcoin's role into fixed income markets in a way that have not happened without Michael Saylor's engineering. The bullish read lands at a charged moment for Strategy. STRC posted a record trading day last month and has emerged as a primary capital generation engine for Saylor's ongoing Bitcoin acquisition roadmap. At the same time, Saylor has since acknowledged the firm may need to sell a portion of its BTC treasury to fund STRC dividends, a potential reversal of its long-standing pledge never to liquidate its Bitcoin holdings. Speaking on Bitcoin's largest asset, Horsley pushed back on the notion that Bitcoin's original payment vision has been permanently displaced by its identity as a store of value. In his view, the last decade was necessarily focused on establishing that Bitcoin has value at all, arguing that debate is now largely settled. With hundreds of millions of people now holding Bitcoin and consensus forming broadly around its worth, the preconditions for a payments revival are finally in place. Quote, "We're actually going to step into that chapter sooner rather than later," Horsley said. Bitwise now manages $15 billion in assets across more than 30 products, with nearly all of that growth concentrated between 2021 and now, up from under $1 billion at the start of that run. BlackRock's entry into the space, long anticipated as a competitive threat, has instead functioned as a rising tide for the whole industry, Horsley argued. He said that BlackRock's brand did the hardest part of the sales process for everyone in the space, including Bitwise. Quote, "BlackRock is like the best thing that ever happened to Bitwise. The biggest obstacle to Bitwise's growth is not BlackRock. It's people not prioritizing doing something in crypto, or people feeling that they're going to get in trouble for doing something in crypto." End quote. Horsley cast the competition as a specialist versus generalist matchup. Bitwise's 200-person crypto-only firm against a diversified asset manager whose credibility now validates the asset class for institutional allocators who might otherwise have stayed out of the market entirely. Okay, so Horsley is saying that the four-year cycle is dead. It doesn't look like it to me. It does not look like it to me. Now, I don't know. The cycle looks different. I'll give it that, but I do not think that the 4-year cycle is dead yet. This may be the last one. I in a way, I kind of hope so, but we don't know. Still, though, there's some hallmarks here that still ring familiar as to the last couple of cycles that I've been through. So and this argument has been made on several occasions by several different people, And that, and you heard a lot of those arguments right before the start of this particular cycle. So the right before the last halvening, you started hearing a lot of people say that the 4-year cycle is dead. And then we start mirroring a 4-year cycle. So it was kind of funny. And here we have Horsley from Bitwise saying that, well, 4-year cycle is dead again. I don't know. We'll find out. Meanwhile, Bitcoin volatility futures is launching June the 1st, according to CME, and this is atlas21.com. CME Group announced on Tuesday the launch of Bitcoin volatility futures, scheduled for June 1st, 2026, subject to regulatory approval. The contracts will allow traders to speculate on the intensity of Bitcoin's price swings without betting on the direction of the price itself, neither up nor down. The new derivative instrument will track CME's Bitcoin Volatility Index, a real-time benchmark of the volatility of Bitcoin options traded on the platform. The BVX, which is the Bitcoin Volatility Index, has been active since 2024 and is published every single second between 7 o'clock and 1600 Central Time on trading days. In practical terms, the index measures whether the market at any given moment expects wide price movements in Bitcoin or a period of relative stability. Quote, with our new Bitcoin volatility futures, traders will be able to invest in or hedge against future Bitcoin volatility, accessing a new and fundamental level of risk management, said Giovanni Vicchioso, CME's global head of crypto products, in an official statement. The product is positioned as a hedging tool for those holding long-term positions in Bitcoin who seek protection from fluctuations without having to liquidate their positions. Financial products tied to Bitcoin volatility have gained traction throughout 2025 and 2026 as institutions and retail traders seek increasingly sophisticated instruments. In March, CoinShares had filed a request for the first Bitcoin volatility ETFs destined for Wall Street, also based on CME's BVX index. The launch of CME's futures thus fits into a derivatives product ecosystem that is rapidly taking shape around this asset class. So now we've got a product where you can literally not have to bet on whether Bitcoin's price goes up or goes down. So there's no long contracts, there's no short contracts. It's not the future of the price. Is it going to be volatile during this period, or is it going to be relatively calm? So I guess, and it kind of makes sense, if you're holding a bunch of longs in Bitcoin, and all of a sudden the price just rips to the downside, and you're holding volatility futures contracts, you're betting that it will be, you were betting for volatility, then you might have been able to hedge your position and not get liquidated, I guess. I'm not exactly sure how it works. But there's this line in here that says, what is it? Yes. Institutions and retail traders seek increasingly sophisticated instruments. And I kind of chuckled at that because it increasingly sophisticated sounds to me a lot like, how can we obfuscate the actual truth of the price far enough away that it's pure casino gambling? Just doesn't matter. Keep yourself safe. Don't trade this stuff. It's not healthy. All right, last up, Aave liquidates Kelp, DAO, hackers, RS ETH positions on Ethereum and Arbitrum. Because I read something yesterday that said that the RS ETH that was put up as collateral is worthless. I wonder what Braden Lindria has to say about that. Cointelegraph, Aave Labs has liquidated the Kelp DAO attackers' remaining RS ETH positions on Ethereum and Arbitrum, moving one step closer to fully restoring RS ETH backing and compensating affected users. This marks a critical step in the DeFi United recovery plan it added that the liquidated collateral tied to the $293 million exploit back on April the 18th was transferred to Recovery Guardian, a multi-sig wallet managed by DeFi United. DeFi United is now only about 10% short of the ether needed to restore the Kelp DAO restaked ETH token, according to Thaddeus I can't pronounce this name, to Thaddeus, vice president of Galaxy Digital's research team. The Kelp DAO exploit has been one of the most devastating crypto hacks in 2026, causing a ripple effect throughout the DeFi lending market that disrupted billions of dollars in liquidity and eroded confidence across the ecosystem. Aave said user funds weren't affected by the liquidations and that Aave's insurance mechanism to provide automated protection against bad debt, called Umbrella, wasn't used. Aave said on April the 28th that clearing up the hackers' collateral on Ethereum and Arbitrum would release 13,000 Ether worth nearly $30.2 million at current prices. Thaddeus, however, noted that there is another 30,765 ETH frozen by Arbitrum DAO that is in legal limbo after the law firm Gerstein Haro LLP filed that restraining order on Friday to prevent the redistribution of the frozen ETH. In response, Aave filed an emergency motion to vacate the restraining notice. Meanwhile, members of Arbitrum DAO are still voting on whether to release the frozen ETH to the DeFi United Fund, with over 90% of voters in favor of the proposal. Voting is set to close tomorrow. DeFi United is also awaiting commitments from stablecoin issuer Circle, Athena, and Frax, as well as Kraken-built Ethereum Layer 2 Inc. Aave needs these commitments to, quote, get it over the line and plug the hole, Thaddeus said. And then let's see, bleeding has stopped. Yeah, it's not. See, yesterday, ran across a couple of sentences in this news article about the ongoing DeFi hacking saga that everybody finds themselves enveloped in. That the way that the hack was done was that fake RS ETH was spun up and then and then used as collateral to borrow real Ether, and that was what the attacker actually took. So now they're saying that, well, this collateral can now be liquidated. So are they liquidating fake RS ETH? Or does anybody actually know whether or not the RS ETH that was quote unquote spun up was real or not? See, and again, I every once in a while, I will get into shit coinery simply as a warning. Nobody knows what the hell's going on here. Nobody really understands anything about what happened. At least that's what it looks like to me, because yesterday it was worthless collateral. Today it's now worth something. What a difference 24 hours makes. And if you live in DeFi land, how do you sleep? Again, do not dabble in this stuff. It is extremely unhealthy, and it's just not gonna do anybody any good at all. So stay as far away from it as you possibly can. And I will see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.